Hello and welcome to SoBricks. I'm Adam and this is SoBricks. This is my channel for reviewing Lego sets and building them and other Lego related stuff. In this video, I'm going to be taking another look at the LEGO Creator 3-in-1 Sunset Track Racer set. This is set number 31089. It has 221 pieces. I paid $18 for this set. I've already done videos about the main build, the alternate build, and the alternate build, but I did tease that I would be doing some kind of community designed build or sort of other people's creations from Rebrickable. I reached out to some of the designers that had alternate builds for this. I would say if you have this set or have something, like go check out all of the various alternate builds for this. There are some really, really cool ones. I reached out, I think, to 3 different designers, and 2 of them have gotten back to me so far. I was kind of waiting to see if maybe the other one would get back to me, but I did not send a follow-up, which I suppose I could have done. But the 2 that did get back to me said it was okay for me to go ahead and do this. So I'm going to be covering their 2 designs. So one of them is, well, actually, they're both going to be Batmobiles. If you remember, if you saw my videos for these sets, for some of these, I did put a Batman figure in them to kind of make them, to just assess whether or not they were minifig scale. And I just happened to have a Batman nearby, so that's what went in there. And both of the alternate build, community design builds that I'm going to be looking at are Batmobiles of different types. So the first one is just called the Sunset Batmobile, and that is by the designer on Rebrickable, Rastacoco. Now, I am going to put their name from Rebrickable in the title, on the thumbnail, in the description. There'll be a link to their Rebrickable page. If you like their designs or want some other designs for other sets, I would recommend going and checking out their channel. So that's one of them. And the other one is going to be designed by Crazy8ron or Crazy8ron. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced. And they did a Tumbler, like a heavy armor Tumbler, using the pieces from this set. So I'm also going to be looking at that one. Again, Crazy8ron and Rastacoco, all their information is going to be in the description. They're going to have some in the title and on the thumbnail. So hopefully they are good with that. Those are the 2 that got back to me, and I am very grateful. So thank you to them for allowing me to look at these builds and featuring them in my video. I really, really appreciate that, and I would love it if anybody who sees this video, you know, goes and shows them some love. I've done this a couple other times with some other sets that had some alternate builds. Generally, I think I've only done them with Creator 3-in-1s, but the community on Rebrickable makes and designs like alternate builds for all kinds of sets using the pieces there. And it's really creative. It's really inspiring. It's really cool. Some people sell instructions. Some people have them out for free. Lots of different stuff. And it's a different side of Lego that, like, I don't experience a ton because I'm not often looking for that. I haven't ever contributed to anything like that, but the way that these people's brains work with, like, taking a given set with the pieces and, you know, reshaping it into something else, I think is really admirable and super cool. So I'm excited to showcase a little bit of that here. So the first one I'm going to do is the Rastacoco designed Sunset Batmobile. While I build, I will speed the video up, and then I'll slow it back down to review that set or that alternate build and just share my quick thoughts about it. And then after that, I'll take that apart, and then I'll build the Crazy8ron heavy armor Tumbler and speed the video up while I build and disassembly the other one. And then I will give my thoughts about that. And then I'll kind of give my thoughts about the experience at the end. So I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, enjoy while I do this. Okay, so while we look at the build process for this Sunset Batmobile designed by Rastacoco, I just wanted to say thanks for watching and then remind you to go check out Rastacoco, the designer of this build, and thank them for allowing me to do this. Then I want to talk about the build here a little bit. I do go through it pretty thoroughly. This one actually feels pretty standard. I was surprised. It's like a very sturdy build. It feels really, really good handling it. The instructions were well laid out, and I thought this was like a super nicely designed thing. It uses almost all of the pieces, which is great. Little sub-assemblies built here on the back, and you can kind of see it coming together, using what was in this set. I think Rastacoco did a really, really good job on this, and I was super pleased, super grateful to be able to cover this and talk about this. And we're kind of finishing it up here, just a few more pieces, and that will be it. So now on to my thoughts for this alternate build by Rastacoco. Okay, so that is the Sunset Batmobile designed by Rastacoco on Rebrickable. This is really, really cool. I'm very happy with this, and I'm excited to talk about it. So thank you to Rastacoco for allowing me to include this in this video, because this is really, really great. I actually, pretty recently, because of the timing of this, looked at the Batman Forever Batmobile that came out, I think, August 1st. And when I was reviewing the like official builds from Lego for the 31089 set here, the Sunset Track Racer, I had a Batman figure nearby that I was putting in to sort of suss out what the scale was, and now we have this. So this is really, really cool. The first thing I want to make note of is the pieces not used in this. So here are the extra pieces. I am seeing on Rebrickable that Rastacoco has said that this alternate build uses 214 pieces. The set only has 221, so 7 pieces should be left over. I'm thinking I have more than that, but I believe that is partially because of like the extra pieces that are small enough that they're in this set, but they're not like counted in the official piece count. I think we're sort of thrown in here. So I actually have 4, 5, 6, 7, and then a bunch of these littler pieces, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So maybe this did use or make use of some of the extra pieces that Lego puts in a given set, because they're small enough by weight that when they add it to the bag for the robots and the calibration and whatever, they add 2 of them in to register that. That's pretty common thing. So not a bunch of exclusions here, actually. This uses more pieces, and I think it's safe to say many more pieces than either of the official alternate builds, which I like to see. It's not a super necessary thing. When I build a Lego Creator 3-in-1, I don't expect the alternate builds to use all the pieces, but generally I do take some time to talk about like notable exclusions and stuff and how they could be incorporated and what we're leaving on the table, especially when they're like more specialized pieces or something like that. And in this case, there's not a ton of exclusions here that I am compelled to try and, integrate into this. So that is all of that over there. And then I wanted to talk about this alternate build. So I think this looks awesome. Now, I don't know off the top of my head what sort of iteration this is kind of based off of the Batmobile. There have been a ton of different versions of the Batmobile, from the first kind of serial movies to the comic books to the TV show with Adam West to the all the other movies, the Tim Burton movies, into the Joel Schumacher movies, into the Chris Nolan, the animated stuff, the comics, into the Zack Snyder Batman vs Superman stuff, into the Batman, the Matt Reeves, I think is the name, with Robert Pattinson, and kind of all of these stuff in between the Lego Batman movie and all of that stuff. So I don't know which one this is the kind of closest to. That said, I feel like even, that the colors of this are not black or a very dark gray or something like that. Actually, the set that came out not too long ago based on the animated series was kind of like a dark blue. And that's, I think, partially because in the comics and for the animated series, sometimes, well, historically, blue has been used when coloring panels just to indicate that it's like very, very dark, but still not make it like entirely black or something. And that just is different for live action versus like animated movies or comic books. And so, you know, despite not being black or gray or anything like that, this still feels very Batmobile to me. And I think there's a few different reasons why I feel that way. I think one of the first kind of indicators is like the overall shape here is really nicely considered. I think having the wings on the back, those are I don't remember when they were specifically added, but if you go look at the history of the Batmobile, it's a relatively common feature to kind of have pseudo sort of bat wings on the rear of it. I think the sort of low to the ground, almost like sport car air or kind of shape of this feels very Batmobile as well. If you look from the top, is wider at the back than it is at the front. I think these pieces, so these pieces that I don't know if they indicate engine or exhaust or intake or what they do here out the front. I could not remember, and I still cannot remember, if there have been Batmobiles that have this sort of thing going on here. I want to say the one from The Batman, the kind of most modern one with um, Robert Pattinson in it, had like some kind of elements of this, and there was like little like kind of blue plasma flame kind of coming out of here and out of the rear, and this just felt really good to me there. Overall, the shaping feels really, really nice, and the color blocking. I mean, we're just making use of what is in the given set, but it feels good. If Batman was going to be driving in a sort of, actually, there are some Batman figures that I think I have, and like maybe Disco Batman and stuff like that from the Lego Batman movie, CMFs and different things that I feel like could fit with this color scheme here. I'm colorblind, but that is how I feel. I think the shaping up at the front feels like this kind of two-pronged little things here that really add to this. How it kind of moves backward is really, really good. I think the back is actually like super competently designed where there's not a lot of like open space. It fills in really, really nice at the rear with lots of nice piece usages here. I liked how we have these like cheese wedges going different ways. Again, like the fins back here. All of the fender pieces are used as fenders for this. The front is great. This just feels like very aggressive, feels very Batmobile to me as well. And I really like that. All the wheels spin well. I think I have the front ones on maybe just a little too tight. There we go. We get some of that going in here. And I just, I love how this looks. I'm really, really impressed with this. The build, if you've never built kind of community created design builds or anything from Rebrickable or created your own mocks to sort of achieve something, it does follow, different conventions than I think the Lego group puts into their official builds. And that is also true in something like the Bricklink designer program sets, where they might use some techniques and some of the instructions are like set up in a way that maybe the Lego group internally designed stuff wouldn't allow or wouldn't follow. And this does have some of that. I think for the most part, this feels like very sturdy, very solid. I can handle this no problem. I can, play with it very easily without worrying about pieces falling off or it being a little bit flimsy or anything like that. That said, there are some elements in here that when building it was a little bit, I don't know if precarious is the right word, but I just had to be like cognizant of what I was doing at given times. And there was some times where it felt like, okay, this is a little bit flimsy, but maybe it will, all work out in the end. This kind of little subassembly here, which I think does a lot to finish out the front, it's only on there a couple studs, not a big deal because it's recessed in there. I don't even think it's like that likely that that would, come off. I think these kind of areas up here, I thought were going to be these little like protrusions here. I thought were going to be a little bit more flimsy, but they are not, which is great to see. I think one of the things about this is that this, unlike the kind of official builds, if we look at the comparison here with the minifigure, it feels about right, but I do not think this is like minifigure compatible. So if we look at the bottom, we can sort of see the structure of this using those Technic pieces here, these axle, these 2x4 Technic bricks with the pins on either side to kind of hold it together. We do a sort of spotty layer of plates above that to give us the areas for which we could build upon. And you can see a lot of different layers here. The other thing you could see is we see the steering wheel in there, and you can see it through the like trans brown, trans black, or like the dark translucent color there. If I pop off the roof area, we can see down in there, and there is, it kind of almost feels like it would be something like Lego would do. They're using that Rastacoco uses that kind of handle piece there, which is often used for like seat backs in many sets, including in the official builds for this one. But there's not really a spot for a figure to go in here. Not only is there not a spot for like a figure to be studded down or anything, it's pretty cramped in there. So this one is actually, a dense build that because of that, actually, I can't get Batman in there, I don't think. It would be a little bit challenging, and even if I mean, it would be really, I can kind of stick them in there, but I had to move the steering wheel around, and there would be probably no way I would be able to get the roof back on. So I would say that, like, this you can't fit a minifigure in there without potentially significant alterations or anything like that, which I'm not interested in attempting. So that was kind of, I don't know if unique is the right word, but something that I was surprised by. I think, in talking about sort of a little more flimsy stuff like these 1x3 tiles are only attached on one stud on either side, so there's a little bit of precarity there. And but I really like how the kind of side areas, the door areas or whatever, are done here. When I was attaching the fenders, I felt like some of that was stuff I'd had seen in Lego sets officially, but also maybe not. I would encourage people, if you're like interested, to like try some of these things, and it might be hard for me to articulate exactly what I mean, but there's just some like building conventions that the Lego group tends to follow that do not constrain sort of mock builders or alternate builders from Rebrickable and otherwise. And I think this has a few of them, but not too many. And I still feel like the end result is very, very sturdy. Building the kind of the kind of sub-assemblies here for the rear, I think, is very good. I loved how we use some of these kind of corner pieces that are like a 1x1 tile with two kind of panel walls on a given corner to kind of get that shaping in there. Like this piece being clipped on. This kind of exhaust or thruster area is actually the same kind of little three pieces used in the same way as they were in the boat alternate build for this set. We have the window pieces that are used kind of just structurally that are kind of underneath here that can't be seen right now, which is nice. I think, you know, this piece, the fender piece, when we attach that there, we have one of those, I think it's a like a 1x3 kind of L plate that comes off here, and we can sort of see it sticking out there. And then we attach the fender up at that one stud right there. But the backside, I do not believe, because of where it's positioned relative to these kind of little subassemblies, like that's not studded down. And then we work a little bit. I think there is some stuff inside that maybe connects that a little bit, but I'm not even 100% sure about that. I think there's an a smaller like 1x2x2 kind of L plate, corner plate, in there as well, that you know, does then connect to that, but even that's a little bit different. If we look at the rear, you know, in terms of like gaps or different things, we do have like a slight little gap right here. And so that L plate that I was just mentioning, which connects to the fender to like the rest of that, really only connects to this is a 1x4 brick here. And we put this L plate on just on that one stud there. And then there's nothing underneath it. And then we attach it on top. So that could lead to some a little bit of different sort of building. I had to, you know, apply pressure at multiple, like the top and the bottom, to kind of get that in there. And I found that a you know, different than what I would expect from like a Lego designer. However, I didn't have any like significant problems with that, I don't think. And I'm still like very, very pleased with how the final result looks and how it handles. So once it's kind of all put together, I'm not like super worried about any of that back there, which is nice. I think there was one part where I don't know if I didn't have the right pieces. Oh, we are losing some stuff here because I was messing with a lot of that. We can get that back on here. So here on the back where I'm using this 1x4 kind of slope piece there, I have it connected to a 1x1 plate, and over here on this side I just have a tile, and then it's backed by these 1x2 cheese slopes there. And actually, you know, because of that, it's not studded down all the way, but it doesn't it's not an issue. In the instructions, it I believe had, you know, a 1x1 stud for each of those, or you know, 1x1 plate for each of those, so it would be studded down on both sides. And I don't know if there's a point that I used one of those when maybe I was supposed to use a tile or something else, that was an error in here, or there could just be, you know, I don't know what that was. Maybe I lost a piece, dropped a piece, whatever, when I was working with the main builds. I didn't have that immediately, like I couldn't find it, but I do know there was a point earlier on in the build where, like on one side, we used one of the, actually one of these kind of translucent 1x1 stud pieces on one side, and then I think we used a 1x1 white plate on the other side to like achieve the same purpose, or you know, the same thing internally for the structure. And I'm wondering if maybe that, well, yeah, okay, well, it's actually at the rear, and I don't know if there's a good way for us to actually see that. It is down kind of underneath here, inside, kind of back a little ways. It's actually, I think, on this piece. So potentially if I take off the wheels, yeah. So right here we can see we are on that, over that one, or well, that 2x8 or 2x6 or whatever that is. On this side holding up that brick is a 1x1 translucent stud, but on the other side we use a 1x1 white plate, and that was sort of the piece that I was missing at the top. When I look back at the instructions, it does have us use one of those translucent studs there, but I don't know if there's some other part of this where I used a one by one plate, somewhere where I wasn't supposed to. Maybe I was supposed to use the, one by one white tile somewhere else, and I accidentally did it with a white plate, or there was some other kind of area where I made some mistake in there. I was able to, it's not a big deal to me, but that's like a structural thing that, in playing could potentially come off. I wasn't concerned about it, and was fine. I still think it looks really good because you basically can't tell that those are different, which is good, I think. So sometimes I just had to kind of improvise a little bit. All of this feels really nice, really sleek, really well chosen, well formed there. And, we used a lot of the pieces, most of the pieces in a great way. I think there wasn't really too much else that I thought was out of standard for Lego. I may be misremembering, but overall, I think Rastacoco did a really good job here. It wasn't incredibly difficult. I think in my experience, Rebrickable stuff and even Bricklink designer stuff and stuff that's like not following the same kind of design and instruction protocols that the Lego group does. People are more willing to kind of do things in a different order, or build things in a way that might not meet the Lego standards. And this one doesn't have a ton of that. Like I said, I can only think of like a few things that maybe I felt that Lego would not do, but I have experienced, many other times in other builds featured on the channel and not, where that kind of building was more overt or more like used, and I did like struggle with it. This didn't feel like it was too challenging of a build for a someone that inexperienced with building or with building toys, or brick built systems or anything like that would encounter. I thought that this was pretty accessible, which I think is really important. I don't know how often that's considered necessarily by designers, but I have to commend Rastacoco for doing a great job on this. So I think this is really, really fun. I think it looks super, super cool. Feels very Batman-like to me, and I maybe am not articulating it especially well, but I would love if Rastacoco would chime in and fill in any of the blank spots I have here about any of the questions I have, or like what was the inspiration, what Batmobile this was, just because I didn't have that readily accessible to me, but I just felt very Batmobile, very cool, super sleek, super fun. And yeah, I don't know if it's a Tim Burton one or if it's I don't know. It's sort of a combination. I think one of the beautiful things about like Batman artists and writers, comic book artists, and certainly the writers and other directors and set deck people or VFX people and all the different people who might have a hand in these things, if they're coming onto a Batmobile or a Batman job, I know that they might light up at the thought of like redesigning the Batmobile, and there's been so many iconic versions of it. And I could also see a Lego like mock designer being like, I want to create my own Batmobile as well, that like feels and is obviously a Batmobile, but might not have a direct kind of reference, more so like taking inspiration from other things to make something that's very deliberately and very evidently a Batmobile, with kind of have taking some of the things under their own design there, and I think that achieves that, or this achieves that. So I think this is really, really cool. It used a good amount of the pieces, and it's a solid build. It's really, really nice, really, really fun. And I built this and then took some time, took a couple days before recording the actual, like, my thoughts on it, what I'm doing now. And I just had this out and was like constantly kind of looking at it and looking at all the different angles and all the different lines that are achieved here, like how this is recessed in there a little bit to carve out the area for these. I thought was beautifully done, and just tons of very, very good stuff here, and a nice solid build, an alternate build for this set. So thank you to Rastacoco for designing this and getting back to me to allow me to, talk about this in my video. That is really, really, I'm just really grateful. So thank you very much. And then I do have one more build to look at that is, like I said, another alternate for this from Rebrickable. Interestingly enough, this one also says that it's using 214 pieces, but I'm not sure if it's the same pieces. And that is the design by Crazy8ron or Crazy8ron, or I think Crazy8ron, crazy the number 8 RON. And that is the Tumbler. Super excited about this. And so that's what we're going to look at next. Again, that's the Tumbler by Crazy8ron for the alternate build for 31089, the Sunset Track Racer. And so I'm going to disassemble this one by Rastacoco, the Sunset Batmobile, and then I'm going to put together the Tumbler, the build by Crazy8ron, and then I'll give my final thoughts about that. And unfortunately, I don't have like two of these sets to be able to build them both at one time. I would like to do that, but I just have to build them one at a time. So this is really, really great, and I'm excited to look at the Tumbler and kind of assess that based on its own merits. There's not going to be like a ton of like comparison to this or anything. I'm super interested in these, and they're pretty distinct, shapes and designs and stuff. So really, really looking forward to that. So that's what we're going to do while I disassemble and while I build the other alternate build. I'll speed the video up and then I'll slow it back down to share my thoughts on the other kind of community designed build by Crazy8ron. So until then, enjoy. Okay, so while we look at the disassembly rather of the Sunset Batmobile designed by Rastacoco, and then while we look at the build for the heavy armored Tumbler alternate build designed by Crazy8ron, I just wanted to say thanks for watching again, and then I wanted to talk about the build. This one was interesting and a little more involved than I thought. It's really, really good, super strong build, and I want to say, like, go follow Crazy8ron and Rastacoco. But if you like this build in particular in this portion of the video, this one's Crazy8ron. Thank you very much to them for putting this out there for free and getting back to me and allowing me to build this and talk about this. It's really, really great. This one has some very interesting connections, very interesting building techniques. You can kind of see the Tumbler already starting to take shape. Really liked the back end of that there with the thrusters, but there's like a lot of sub-assemblies that then you attach to other sub-assemblies that then you attach. There's some asymmetry in here just by necessity of the available pieces that were used, which I thought was really nicely done. We can kind of get the part of the roof up there, and then we can start working on the whole like front end and the front kind of spoke, or like the arms that extend out in front of the forward axle there. And this was really interesting as well, and it connects in an interesting way to get the desired angle. And I was pretty impressed with this and felt really good about it after the fact. So really, really nice. We can add on that other arm there and other finishing touches, and that is it. So now on to my thoughts about this alternate build by Crazy8ron. Hey, so this is the Lego Sunset Track Racer Creator 3-in-1 alternate build, community build, designed by Crazy8ron. This is the heavy armor Tumbler. This is also awesome and very unique. It was an interesting build experience, and I think the end model looks really really good. I mean, it looks good from many different angles. I think it's well chosen, and there's a lot to look at here. So I'm excited. Thank you to Crazy8ron for allowing me to build this and talk about this in the video, and thanks for designing this and everything. This is really really something. And like I did for the last alternate, and like I do for all my Creator 3-in-1s, I want to make note of all the leftover pieces here. This one, like I said, supposedly used 214 pieces, which is the same as the actual one by Rastacoco, but in this one by Crazy8ron, there's different pieces used and not used. I think both of them may have made use of some of the extra pieces or the spare parts that are used in the set. And for this one, like the last one, I was still short one by one white plate. So I grabbed one from my collection. I don't know where I lost that at what point. I find it unlikely that both designers of these would have used a part, the same part that wasn't in the set. So at some point, whether it was a spare part or extra piece or something from the main one that didn't make it into the rest of the parts or anything, I'm not 100% sure, but I did add one there so that I had that. And the other leftover pieces here, so the windscreen piece not used, one of the brackets, a couple of these pieces not used, the steering wheel not used, and that's the main thing. And the steering wheel could maybe be used. There are parts here that could have fit it. I don't know if there's any way to have added the steering wheel to this that would make sense. There's just not room. Also, I'll just point out this one, there's not really even any question in my mind that this is not minifig compatible, but for sake of scale, we can sort of see what this looks like. So here is the Batman and here is the Tumbler. I'm thinking of the official Lego Tumblers that I've looked at, and there have been some different ones. And when there was a set that I think Bane was driving the Tumbler, and maybe Batman was in a helicopter or something, and I think that Tumbler was a smaller scale. This is smaller than many of the other official Lego Tumblers that I've seen. The ones even in the play scale are a bit bigger than this. So I don't know how, I mean, maybe they've done one in a advent calendar or a tumbler in a polybag or something that is a lot smaller, but in this kind of realm, this is, I think, a little bit small, and this is so interesting. So besides the leftover pieces here that weren't used, I don't have any real issues with any of them or think they should have been included or improved upon. This is a really crazy build. I would say, some of the things that I talked about for the last alternate model that I talked about, they are able to use techniques and connections that the Lego group themselves probably wouldn't approve, and that allows us to do something that's truly unique and truly different. And I would say that this one uses quite a bit of them. So the build for this is just really wild and off the walls a little bit, but it ends up creating a super nice looking design here, nice looking vehicle. So we do use these Technic bricks kind of for the core, use some different plates on there to build that out. There's a lot of sub-assembly builds in this that then get added into and built up on. So I want to say this side area here is a early sub-assembly. This one over here building like the area for the rear where like the thrusters are. This is really nicely considered using those red cheese wedges there, as well as these pieces. I think that is really, really nice, kind of right above the rear axle there. That was its own subassembly using a bracket and a brick. Then the kind of roof area at the rear was its own subassembly that I did have to like flip some things around at various points. Not, I just wasn't following the directions correctly. The directions for this, I have to say, they were a video like showing these steps. And I think that's where like part of my confusion came in. So I just had to keep playing the video and pausing it. Occasionally I had to go back just to double check to make sure I was doing things correctly. But it wasn't a huge problem having that be the format, so not a big deal, but just I don't know if it's for brevity's sake or what, it was it took a little bit more figuring out about like where pieces are going and stuff like that than like the Lego official instructions. It's just a little bit different of a process there. So I just had to kind of work with that, but not a big deal. So this is its own little subassembly. I like how we use those same kind of corner pieces back here. I think that's really, really nice. Again, the color scheme for this, it's not black, it's not gray, it's not camo or anything, which I think like when Bane had one, maybe it was more of like the urban camo kind of a camouflage looking thing, or like tan or whatever. And when in the Chris Nolan Batman, in the first one, when Batman or Bruce Wayne like test drives one of these, I think it's kind of like a tan color or something, because it was like a military vehicle, but then wanted it in black, of course. And so here we're limited by the colors that are used. And again, to me, like the last one, this feels very like, okay, that's a Tumbler, which is, I think, really nicely achieved here. So like very obvious from its overall form, how it's sort of leaned forward and everything like that, and just the kind of overall shaping up here. It's like, yeah, that's the Tumbler, which I think is great. Just like the previous one, I was like, yeah, that's a Batmobile. And even with the colors being different here, with a lot of white and orange and blue there, still very, very evident to me. So that's great. So this is its subassembly. These kind of areas here are their own sub-assemblies that are used on these 2x4 by 1x2 kind of bracket pieces there. And then we build the kind of slanting forward area. So a lot of these stuff back here actually feels pretty good. There's a little bit of stuff. Actually, there's a point where we're using a bunch of like cheese wedges in here, and over there we can see one of them we used white, and then we used the like dark translucent or trans brown. And on the other side that you can just barely see that it's not a white one in there. So there's like asymmetry in there. There's actually a lot of asymmetry. So using the blue 1x4 here versus the white one there. Down in there, we have some plate that is used that is not used on this side, that if I can show, if you look just behind that Technic pin there, there's a little bit of stuff that this one doesn't have. So interesting use of pieces, just making do with, what you have available to kind of achieve this, which is really something and really special and cool to see. And we used both of the bricks with the Technic pins on them, and they're actually both used in the rear here. And they're sort of used structurally. The pins aren't being used by either. We can kind of see the pins in the back by this one, and we can certainly see the ones underneath there. So those are used almost in place of like just a 2x4 brick, and then we just had to make sure we had space around them where those pins would stick out. And then, yeah, this whole forward area here is built in a kind of a group, a bundle of like sub-assemblies that then come together and then get finalized there. So we build kind of the one for using this like roof piece here at the front very early on, using some like studs on the side build and everything. And there is some like asymmetry underneath that. We also build this kind of one here with these slopes and the 1x6 orange tile there pretty early on. And then we work on, I don't remember the exact order. I guess this one that's in the middle that uses like the flag pieces there, which we can kind of see underneath there. We use that, or we build that, at a certain point, and then we build these areas that are kind of like these arms, but they're like the very iconic side of tumbler shape there that go around the front wheels there, and we build those. We make use of all the fender pieces, which I think is really well chosen for those, and then they're attached on a bracket. There's some somewhat fragile building in there, and using some stuff that I don't know if Lego would be okay with in like if it was their own design. That's part of the fun of this. We do use the window elements there, actually kind of for where the windscreen might be in the tumbler, which I think is cool, and it adds to sort of the paneled, very faceted, kind of multi-angled look of the tumbler. That's like very characteristic of that. These little arms reach forward, and they do go around and cover up actually the axle up there, which is really, really nice. So like from the front, you don't really see the axle up there. We actually used all four of the bushings at the rear, so the ones kind of right at the center to space this out a little bit more, so we're not having the tire rub up against any piece in there, like that blue plate right there and right there. We don't want these to interact with that, so we have like these at the middle sort of area, and that also we can adjust those to make this spin well. And then we have the wheels, further out with the bushings kind of there to fill in that. So the one up on the front doesn't have these little small like bushing there, and they spin well. This one I had to also adjust the like flag pieces that are being used inside, so those aren't rubbing on the wheels. And then once I did that, I was freely able to roll this back and forth and feel pretty good about it. So that's really nice. These kind of areas up here are connected sort of by like maybe one stud, two studs, and then kind of brought together. So you actually kind of build one of these and connect it to all these other sub-assemblies, and then we build the other one sort of at the end. And the connection for this to achieve this angle is really, really unique, and was a little bit complicated. So look at the bottom of this to sort of see some asymmetry, just making use of what parts we can throughout this. And actually, this whole bit holds together relatively well, even though I would say like these areas here are a little bit more flimsy. Same for some of this stuff, but this whole subassembly is not too bad. But how do we attach it here? And I think seeing some of the internals is really, really interesting. So we actually use one of these pieces, which are used back here as well, in there. And then we have this kind of open area here. You can see where I was talking about the like white cheese wedge on one side and the dark translucent one on the other. It's a little bit hard in here to see just because of lighting. You can see, there's different gaps and different things that occur throughout this, because that's just the nature of this kind of building. And we didn't have the pieces to fill those in, which maybe would have made stuff a little more structurally sound or something, but we don't have that. So we do have that piece there, which I actually think plays into the structure of this. And we do one of these 1x2 with the bar pieces in the modified 1x2 with the two clips, and then we put a 1x2 cheese wedge on there. So this sort of acts as a hinge here. And what we do is this gets attached right there, so we can get that studded down. And then we can kind of move this, and if we move it all the way up, so that the modified plate here is flat, so relative to like the bottom of the frame here, which in this orientation would be like the ground, the rest of this has that slight forward lean. And I don't know if there's space for this, but if we could have used one of these inverted tiles here to like hold in that piece a little bit more, that would have been nice. But I'm also wondering if there's not quite space for that, because what we're going to do is actually attach this 1x2 here to the thing. Now I've just now put an extra piece in there that was not in the directions. Let me pop that out and sort of show what this looks like now. When you actually do attach this, you don't have both arms on there. You only have maybe the one on the right side, and then we add the one on the left a little bit later. So it makes it a little bit easier to see. But we're going to actually just line this 1x2 up to the front of that dark bluish gray area right there. And we have to kind of fit it in, slot it in, making sure that we're like clearing everything. And then I found pressing down kind of right on these vented pieces allows that to engage. And now it is on there, and that feels pretty good. I do actually want to see what it would be like if it would even work if I had this other piece in there, just to have something to have that connected a little bit. Because in my mind, what I would have thought to do is like have this connected already, and then we like clip in the rest of it there. But I'm not sure if that's possible, and I also don't know that this would need to be like held down a little bit stronger to be able to do that kind of connection. But that is something that we see the Lego group do. And now that I've added in this extra piece in there, which is just meant to try to hold in that clip, this is, I think, interacting with that 1x1 piece down there, as well as some maybe other parts, so that it's just we're very, very close in there. And without that, it's actually not that difficult to get that lined up and get that in there. It's sort of sitting at the really nice angle, partially because we're making use of that cheese wedge, this piece there on the inside. And look at that, it's just attached there, but you can sort of hold it by that. Certainly holding it from the back is not a big deal. Holding it like this, not a big deal. But I'm not especially worried about that, even though in building it, I was like, oh man, this is going to be very fragile or flimsy there. And there were several times in building this where I thought, this probably isn't a connection that like the Lego group would allow. But in my experience of building it, I didn't encounter like a lot of trouble with anything here. I would say, and I don't want to compare these two because I really just want to big ups to the designers of these, Rastacoco and Crazy8ron. And I don't really want to go down the road where I'm like, well, this one was better than this one or anything, but there are differences. One, I mean, they're designing different things. They're different shapes. They're both Batmobiles, but they're like very different Batmobiles there. And so, but on a like relative basis, I would say this one is like slightly more challenging just because it uses some more techniques that have the potential to be a little more unstable. And that is not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It uses techniques that are a little bit have more potential for failure, I think. But it allows us to achieve something that is really, really different. So getting this angle here, I think, is really nicely achieved. And overall, I think this is like a really inspired build, a nice use of pieces. I think that about both of these, and I would love to have both of these here. I may have to get another one of this set, this Sunset Track Racer, to kind of have both of these here. I love Batmobiles. I love all the different things, and I'm sure there are many people on Rebrickable who make alternate builds of lots of different sets into Batmobiles. It's pretty common if you look on Rebrickable for a given set to see like, oh, someone made an X-Wing out of this. Actually, I think somebody did make an X-Wing out of this one, but also other stuff. So when you're looking at those alternate builds, you can find stuff. And I'm sure there are many other Lego sets that have alternate builds that are Batmobiles that function in very, or are built in very different ways and unique ways and cool ways to achieve kind of the overall thing here. I think this is so fun and so cool. And you know, I don't know if it's as stable as, well, I don't think as Lego would allow, but you know, comparing to the other one, I think the Sunset Trek, or the Sunset Batmobile, was maybe a little more solid, but that has to do with like the shaping and whatever else. This one is a little bit different, but like I don't have any problem, you know, handling this and rolling this around and anything. Like now that it's all put together, I'm actually like I'm not being crazy rough with it or anything, but this is totally able to be played with. And that's a real testament to the designer for this. So I think that's really, really good. And I'm super pleased with this. I thought this was awesome. So really, really cool. And thank you to Crazy8ron. Thank you to Rastacoco for allowing me to talk about these, for designing these and putting the instructions out there, you know, for free. If anybody watches this and like wants to support those people, hopefully they can chime in with like ways to do that. They may also have other designs for alternate builds for this set or other sets that maybe they charge $1 or $2 or something, a euro or whatever the currency they use for access to those instructions. And that's one way. I don't know for them specifically, but I think there are certain designers who are on Rebrickable who might have a buy me a coffee or like a link to their PayPal or something else. So if you're interested in supporting them, definitely check out their other builds on Rebrickable, Rastacoco and Crazy8ron. I'll link those in the description. Check them out and maybe give their stuff a shot. And if there's other ways to support them, you know, I recommend doing that. They were very gracious in responding to me and allowing me to talk about this. So I'm just very grateful and appreciative to them. And make sure to go subscribe to them or follow them on Rebrickable or save them and look at what they have. And if there's ways to support them, maybe they can chime in and talk about those. I'm going to be sending them a link to the video once it is done. Maybe they will have some other feedback for me and other stuff there. I think this is a really fun exercise, really, really cool. Super, super big thank you to Rastacoco and Crazy8ron for designing these and allowing me to talk about it. So I think that is it. I thought these were great, very, very fun, a little bit of a different kind of video here, and I just loved doing it. So I'm very, very pleased. And with all that said, I think that's it. So if you like this video, please click the thumbs up and give it a like. If you like my other videos, click the subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all the Lego videos I'll be doing here in the future, including probably more like mock or other people's creations from Rebrickable at various points. It's not something I've done very often, but the couple times that I have done it, it has been like very, very fun for me and just really, really enjoyable. So look out for other stuff like that. Or if you know of a set that I might be covering that has great alternate builds, or maybe you designed an alternate build or something, you know, I would love to be informed about that. So maybe more stuff like this, but then tons of other Lego sets that I'm going to be like talking about and sharing my thoughts and reviewing and building and stuff. So if you're interested in any any of that, please consider subscribing. It helps me a lot, means a lot to me. And just for the sake of this video, I'm not going to talk about any of the other things. So go follow Crazy8ron and Rastacoco in whatever ways you can. And thank you to them. And with all that said, until next time, thanks. Bye.